But also there's this factor of reliability of your supplier. So if you're on the mountain and you go down the mountain, half the time the store that you go to is out of milk, you're going to stock up on a little bit more. Or if the milk is frequently tainted or bad or spoiled, when you buy it, you're going to get a little bit more to make sure that you cover that risk. And that's how batch size is determined. And of course the goal is to get as little as possible. So Tim, how would you go about reducing the amount of milk that you would have to carry on hand?
Yeah, that's a great question to lead in. And basically what we're talking about is the frequency with which you want to get that. So we'll have customers that will do delivery runs frequently, so they can carry a small amount on hand, or maybe you have to deliver further overseas or something, and they may have to purchase larger amounts a little bit less often because of the transportation process. But we do use this every day in our lives, and we create some sort of process in order to pick up the milk. In this case, we call it a milk run, or in our factory we call it a pitch route, which is a delivery system where we pick up and drop off items on a set basis. And I know at my house we pretty much do the same process. We go to the grocery store every Sunday and load up for the week. That's convenient with a young family and 2 working parents to go out and to try to hit it once a week and try to minimize the number of trips we have to take to the store.
Now, there's 2 sizes. One is a vendor going out and delivering parts to several of its suppliers, and then there's also the company actually going out and picking up materials along the way, right? Do you have a definition of it? Is one a milk run versus the other? Because I know there's like a lot of vendor managed inventory out there.
Correct. We use both models. It really depends on the type of product and the vendor and whether they're set up to do that. Certainly, if the vendor wants to come in and help us manage the inventory, that's preferred.
I was going to ask you, which one do you prefer, and then what would be the factors that keep you from doing that?
In some cases, we may know the product better than the vendor or whatever, but our usage, maybe they're not far enough on a lean journey to be able to participate in this kind of process. So in that case, we'll do the pitch ourselves. But it's that frequency of moving parts that minimizes whip on the floor and how much you got to carry, and that also creates a visual in the factory or organization for things that aren't going well, inconsistencies. I mean, you got too much, you're using not enough, product spoils or something like that. So it's another visual signal that helps you understand the status of the process.
Well, I liked how you talked about how far the vendor is on its lean journey, because that's often one of the things that hampers your own progress is when you pick a vendor that doesn't work along with you. If you have a vendor that's going to deliver more frequently in smaller quantities and allow more flexibility in the way you order, you're going to be able to move things along more quickly. But if you have a vendor that has minimum order quantities or large pack sizes and things like that, or if they're not willing to be flexible in how they present the material to you, you start running into these issues like you're talking about of where it's harder to make progress yourself. So vendor selection gets to be very important. The further and further you get along your lean journey, you need lean vendors to support a lean company. And that's something that's often neglected is, you get people who want to progress with their own company, and they forget that it's all a relationship, and that you have to work together with all your vendors, and you have to even train your customers at some point on how to order from a lean company, and that things are going to change, and they're not going to get the big price breaks from large quantities that are delivered all at once. They might have to take delivery over a longer period of time, which actually works better for them in a lot of cases. So again, you have to start thinking up and down the whole value stream as you start thinking about how you're going to organize your whole value or your value stream and your delivery systems.
Yeah, I agree. Especially with this milk run, it's a compromise of trying to figure out the delivery option. Maybe you'd be willing to pay a little bit more for more reliable, more flexible deliveries, but far too often we look at just the price.
Well, that's what we're talking about here with milk, and nobody goes and buys a 20-gallon jug of milk, even though it'd probably be a lot cheaper per gallon, right?
Right, exactly.
And you know why that is. It's just that the milk would go bad, you wouldn't use it, you risk spoilage, you have to find a place to store it, you have to get a refrigerator. So intuitively, we know about keeping the batch size smaller. And now as milk has gotten more and more expensive over the last few years, it's a lot harder to go and part with the money for a gallon of milk, than it used to be. And all this stuff is all the factors of why you try to keep your batch sizes small.
I think when you consider milk, probably the most important aspect of milk is the freshness. I mean, nobody wants to have that spoiled milk. So, I mean, it's an important lead-in to understand really what the value is to the customer. We talked a little bit about delivery and things, but, when it comes to the actual product, it's the quality that is going to stand out. You're going to go back to the same product that you enjoy. So in this picture, you kind of see a method in which they're trying to ensure the quality or freshness of the product. So you see the date time stamp for how long the milk will be good for. And there's a number of applications that this can be used for in factories.
And when I saw this and we were talking about it during our rehearsal and kind of going over the presentation we were going to give, I worked on a project with a company called VideoJet quite a few years ago, and they actually make equipment that does this, this labeling, and they're on their own lean journey. So as you start thinking again about the whole network of vendors and suppliers and the people that you work with, the more people are on that lean journey, the more they're able to manage the quality of the materials that you're using, the machinery that you're using, and your progression gets much easier when you work with lean vendors.
Yeah, I agree. We got this example where we use a similar type of identification scheme for epoxies or short shelf life items. That's very critical, especially for medical products, to understand that you're using something that's within the date range. And we'll actually do the date time stamping on epoxies used to glue in connectors and things. So this application is very applicable to manufacturing or office environments.
And I think people look at it as like foodstuffs and chemical things that have that shelf life. But if you think about things like batteries, batteries go bad. And, if you're in an organization that ships a lot of electronics, you may end up finding that if you don't, pull, first in, first out system for batteries, you end up at the bottom of the pile, starts going bad. And you have to develop the lean methodology of, stocking from the back, so that the front stuff is always the oldest stuff, so you never have stuff stagnating in your system. And batteries like that. But you can think of, I think in the coffee one that we did last month, we even talked about things like houses. If you're a builder and you build a house, people don't think about houses as having freshness. But if you build a house and you can't sell it for the first year, and some new innovation comes out, or more efficient water heaters come out, or better insulation, or any number of things come out, it starts making that house you built obsolete, and it's harder and harder to sell old structures because of this whole freshness thing. So the idea is, the more you can keep your inventory down, you can get a lot better. You have a better, way you can market the value to your customers. And it's like, these things get older, they go bad. It's hard drives do the same thing, computer equipment. Anywhere along the way, you start finding these problems. And if you get a system for keeping your inventory down, pulling from the front, you can deal with the problem of spoilage a lot better.
Yeah, I think it's a well-valid point. Sometimes the shelf life isn't well known, but all items have a shelf life. So certainly, in my case, we have got good fresh milk. We have it delivered to the house, and then the next problem is going to be, how do you determine when to go get more? How you're using it. So we're going to have this example of the level in which you can tell the milk. So you see in this pictorial, you have an opaque container on the left in the blue, and it's hard to determine what level at which the milk is in that product. The one on the right, the pink, is a clear container, so you can see the level decreasing on that. And so this kind of gives you an example of how to use level indicators. We have a lot of those types of visual systems within factories or offices to see when to replace items.
That whole idea of transparency isn't just for things like seeing the inventory levels. if you do a lot of TPM work, total productive maintenance, where you go and you try and make a machine easier to operate, you'll start noticing things like there's a lot of, checkpoints that are inside of panels, where you might have a gauge, you have to open a panel to be able to see the gauge, or, a basket that catches metal shavings and it's underneath the cover. And if you start thinking about the idea of transparency, you can, modify the machinery. And every time I say modify machinery, I always say make sure you're qualified to do it, and, keep safety in mind and all that. But, the designer of the machine sometimes gets it wrong, and they tell you to go through and do these checks. And, I went on a TPM event years and years ago, and I was leading a team, and you had to check a basket. And this basket was catching metal shavings, but it was underneath a cover. So to go in there, you had to, physically go there and pop it open to check it and make sure that your basket wasn't getting full. So we just cut a hole in the top of the panel and put a plexiglass piece in there and then sealed it up so that nothing would splash out. And then you could go and see the basket without having to open it. You don't create a mess, and you don't have any splashing when your machine is running or anything. And things like that, the more visual you make things and the more easy it is to check, the less active, less activity you need to require of your team, and it makes it easier for them to be successful.
Yeah, I agree. We use this example quite a lot in parts and pieces, and even the plastic pellets used to feed the extruders and things to do the cables. Create that visual so that they know as they're getting low, they need to take some sort of action to replace that.
Well,
the other thing you see here is this mixed model line example. You have the blue type of milk and the pink type of milk. That's very common in many processes to have multiple items, multiple parts